Hello, everybody, and welcome to Grimwit with Dimwits. I'm T.
And I'm Blondie.
Hey, Blondie, how are you doing today?
I am good. A little shaken, but I'm good.
I kind of want to talk about the earthquake that we had going on here in SoCal.
That's right.
So I was at work, and I didn't feel a thing. But apparently, this was a pretty decent size one, and people were talking about it all over the internet. So I feel like I missed out.
You missed the rocking and the rolling.
I did.
Well, I felt it. It was a quick jolt, and then it just kind of rolled what it seemed like forever. Either that or I was just loopy. But it kind of rolled for 10, 15 seconds. Wanted to get up and kind of go with it and start singing Rolling on the River.
Put a saddle on it and ride it out.
That's right. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I don't know how I missed it. That's kind of weird, isn't it? How some people can feel it so hard. And then I know this has always happened over the years. I mean, you grew up here. I grew up here, born and raised. And there's people that'll feel it. And then a couple miles away, they didn't feel a thing.
It's true. So this one was in like Pasadena area and it was a 4.6. So it was pretty decent.
That's a decent sized earthquake.
It fascinates me how far it actually does travel.
I'm always fascinated. And then, I'm again talking about how people feel it in different places. It always surprises me that, they can feel it in LA. We don't feel it out here. And then they'll feel it in Nevada. And you're like, what the? Why'd you skip us? We want to feel it.
Maybe it's the way that what do they call them? The fault line is angled.
I live on a fault line. Okay. Which I'm wondering if that's the best thing because I'm right at the center. So everything else gets kind of shaken all over the place, but maybe it's more cool here.
Okay. And so when the fault line shakes so hard, it swallows you up.
I've thought about that. I can literally go down the freeway and see the open fault line. Okay. It's right here.
That's crazy. I'm going to have to look next time I go to your house.
Look left or look right. It's there. It's on both sides of the freeway.
Wow, you got a lot happen out there. I remember last time I was there, I left and it was on fire.
We just like to keep things hopping around here, literally. I mean, no downtime. We just keep it rolling over here.
Okay.
Anyway, it sounds like I missed out on something fun.
Of course, if you're from the Midwest, earthquakes are not fun.
Well, they couldn't be worse than the ones we have here, are they?
No, I'm saying in the Midwest, they don't have them. So to them, it's not fun. To us, we're used to it and it's fun.
I think that applies for everybody in the world who doesn't have them. I know people who are deathly afraid of earthquakes, but I guess being around them, you get a little bit used to them,
Right. I know my dogs don't like them.
Oh, yeah. Dogs don't like them. Now, a hurricane, I'm not signing up for that. No, I'm good.
Or a tornado. You're not going to chase a tornado.
Oh, nope. None of those things. Just give me my little earthquakes. Mama's happy.
You're a freak.
Anyway, I know you have a great story this week. Let's segue into that.
Okay. Well, this story is of identical twins, a missing person, a nasty divorce, a sex tape, and CSI moves.
Okay, that's like 5 stories. You're setting the bar way too high for my little one-story storyers.
Always setting that bar higher. So let's get our grim on. Living in Edgewater, Colorado, Daniel and David DeWild were identical twins, born a minute and a half apart, and they were very close. They were both mechanics that worked at the transit authority. Daniel met Heather, the two married, and they had 2 children, Jacob and Hannah. But the marriage wasn't good and a bit rocky, so they filed for divorce after 6 years. You know how divorce proceedings can get rough? Well, this was the case with Daniel and Heather.
It's a bummer. When you were first saying all the names, I was thinking, geez, could that be any more white picket fence family?
It's more like chain link fence with barbed wire at the top.
With a tower and a shooter.
That's right. So 2 days before their divorce was final, on July 24th, 2003, Heather went over to Daniel's house to sign a check and get the insurance cards for the kids. Her father, who was a retired Denver police officer, didn't think it was a good idea to go over there. He said, quote, "I told her not to go there, and I didn't think she would, but she did," end quote.
Come on, people. Never go alone. Never, never.
We need to start writing it all down and make it a bullet point book. I know we used to talk about writing a book about our shenanigans, but I think this one might be more useful. Not as hysterical, but more useful.
You might be right. We could put something good in the world for once.
Heather went, but took her 2 children thinking she would be safe. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Heather disappeared. When Heather didn't return home after going to her soon-to-be ex-husband's, Heather's parents got worried because they already had a rocky relationship, and as the divorce was coming to the end, Daniel had become more desperate and hostile. Heather's father was afraid of what Daniel may do. So Heather's mother called Daniel. He told her that she went shopping, but she knew immediately that wasn't true and told him that it was a lie because she didn't leave the house with any money or credit cards. Plus, Heather's parents knew that she wouldn't leave her kids behind, even if it was with their father. Thinking this wasn't a good scenario, Heather's mother rushed over to Daniel's house to pick up her grandkids. All she could think of was to get the kids and get out of there.
Aren't a mother's instincts just amazing and undeniable?
It's crazy.
And she did get the kids, right?
She did get the kids, yes.
Wow.
During the interview with 48 Hours, Heather's father, the ex-cop, was talking about driving around, looking in between houses for Heather's car and any signs of her the day that she disappeared. On that day, local cops were called in and they went to Daniel's house, but didn't see anything suspicious.
How are people, bad people, able to hide stuff from the cops so well?
I think in this instance, she was a missing person, so they didn't really pay much attention. I'm just speculating, but I think that could be why.
Well, maybe you're right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Then the next morning, Heather was officially ruled a missing person. Mark Kreider, a detective with the Denver PD, was asked to come and help the Edgewater police find Heather. The detective learned about the rocky marriage, that they were almost done with the divorce proceedings, that Heather was awarded temporary custody, and that Daniel was going to have to pay child support. According to the information that he received, Daniel was mad because he felt like he was going to lose his home and he wasn't going to be able to pay his bills. So to help him out, Daniel's brother, David, and his girlfriend, Roseanne, moved in with Daniel to help pay the bills.
Okay, so with that, he wasn't going to lose his home, it sounds like. Maybe he had to share it, but he wouldn't lose it. And I know I'm making assumptions here, but why would you rather hurt somebody you once loved rather than lose a stupid house? I mean, it's just a house. Besides, if he ended up doing anything wrong, he'll get the big house soon enough. So, problem solved.
As I predicted, chain link fence with barbed wire.
And a shooter.
Sorry, forgot the tower and the shooter.
That's the best part.
Detective Kreider started investigating at Daniel's house, but he said about his first interaction with Daniel, quote, quickly into our conversation, he mentioned that he had an attorney, which I thought was a little odd, and his attorney told him that he shouldn't talk to the police, end quote. Now, it doesn't take a genius to think that this was odd, and why would you be bringing up an attorney right away? Kreider continued, quote, well, why do you have an attorney? This is a missing person. We are trying to help you find your wife, end quote.
See, this is what I'm talking about. Stupid people who get attorneys before they're officially suspects are really good at hiding evidence, but too stupid to keep their mouth shut. How is this possible?
Because they think they're smarter than everyone else.
Oh, but geez, everyone else can see they're not.
But they can't. Are they rose-colored glasses?
Yeah.
A few minutes into their conversation, David, Daniel's brother, pulls up into the driveway, and immediately Daniel walks over, grabs him, and tells him to get inside and not to talk to the police. Kreider thought, quote, I'm thinking now we don't have a missing person. We have a murder, end quote. Normally, in trying to help someone find a missing person, you would want to let the police into your house, give them a chance to look around to see if there were any signs of why the person went missing. But Daniel refused to let the detective in.
Duh, because if she was really missing, they'd be all over the police, not hiding from them, not barring them from coming into their home. I mean, everybody knows that's murder 101.
And how many murder classes are there?
I don't know, just get the book.
The one that we'll be writing soon.
That's right. We're promoting it now.
Just for what, $9.95, free shipping and handling.
You went way back.
Right. But wait, there's more.
you get a free bookmarker with your prison number in it.
It took 5 days to get the warrant, which meant that Heather had now been missing for 6 days. They got into the house. They couldn't find anything. No murder weapon, no drops of blood, no signs of struggles, or any signs that Heather had been there.
You know, it sounds like he cleaned up too well. I mean, leave a few things there. This way it seems like you're not cleaning it up. Hello?
Well, maybe Mary Mays just left. What they later learned was that the day that Heather went missing, David had taken his Suburban 15 miles out of town to get it repaired, which was odd because David is a mechanic along with his brother, who is also a mechanic. Why didn't they just fix it themselves? I saw the picture of it. It was an older Suburban. It wasn't like the new ones with all the computer technology.
Well, even easier to fix, right?
Exactly.
What's a problem?
So July 31st, 2003, the deputy sheriff brought in dogs to search the Suburban to see if there was any scent of human remains or anything that could have been decomposing in the car. The deputy sheriff said, and I quote, "He hit on the rear. I believe it to be the driver's side rear door area." Detective Kreider flat out asked David about it, saying, "Was there a decomposing body in your vehicle?" Following it up with, quote, "Did you kill Heather?" End quote. David kind of put his head down. He got a little emotional and said he needed to talk to an attorney. Now, if that doesn't scream, I did it or had something to do with it, I don't know what would.
Yeah, these guys, both of them, they really need to start watching some true crime already.
At this point, they believed that the brothers killed Heather. But what helped solidify it was that all of a sudden, David and his longtime girlfriend, Roseanne, got married on August 1st, 2003. I believe Heather's been missing for 8 days now. And so August 1st was the day after David was confronted about his Suburban smelling.
Okay, so why does this prove he's guilty? Just because he got married real quick. Enlighten me.
So the interview talked to Roseanne about the whole getting married thing, and she honestly said that she wasn't surprised, that she'd been hounding him for a while, and all of a sudden he popped up and said, "Well, let's get married." So they did. They also asked her if it occurred to her that maybe getting married, she wouldn't be able to talk to the cops or even testify if it went to court. Roseanne said, quote, "No, I don't know the law," end quote. I have thoughts about this, but I'll hold off till later in the story. Heather's been gone for 2 weeks, and on August 4th, her car is found in an apartment complex about 5 miles from Daniel's house. It was a 4-door Nissan Sentra. It had baby seats in the back, but all the windows were left open, which meant that because it had been sitting out for 2 weeks, the elements had affected the car, and every day it sat there, the evidence was more destroyed. They told Heather's parents that her car had been found, but they didn't find Heather. I guess her father had a big breakdown because he knew. I can see being a civilian that you may still hold out hope, but a former police officer, he knows, understands how things go. On September 4th, 2003, a worker was moving dirt on Highway 6 using a bulldozer. He uncovered Heather's body in a shallow grave. She was found wrapped in trash bags. Her hands and neck were tied with rope binding them together. She had a duct tape mask that was several strips of duct tape going horizontal and vertical on her face, and she was wearing the same clothes she had on July 24th. Her death is officially ruled a homicide. Even though there was no direct evidence, they did find the same type of trash bags at Daniel's house.
Isn't that evidence? I mean, I've seen it on true crime shows where they match up the batch numbers of where the trash bags were made, and then they can prove that that exact trash bag came from that exact batch. So it's kind of like, the one and however the number bajillion that they would have those two together, like the bag on her, the bag at his house.
Mm-hmm.
But they've done that. And secondly, he covered her face with duct tape. That's another tell, because you only cover up people's faces when you don't want them to see you because you feel guilty.
That part I don't know, his motivation for that. Being out in the elements also affected her body, like it did her car. So because of the decomposition and the outside conditions her body was in for that month, The coroner was unable to determine the cause of death. Even though they knew the brothers had something to do with her death, they did not have enough evidence to arrest them. Detective Kreider believed they may get away with this.
So was it proven that his brother had been there when Heather showed up?
The brother lived at the house too, but let's wait and see.
Okay.
Months go by, and Heather's father can't understand why they're not arresting Daniel. The detectives are telling him that they're looking into it, but nothing was really happening. He questioned what was going on since he was a member of the Denver Police Department, and they weren't telling him anything. The case goes cold.
How frustrating.
I can only imagine. Almost 2 years later, in 2015, Jefferson County got a new district attorney named Scott Story. Heather's parents go and talk to the new DA and basically just lay it all out there for him, and the district attorney tells them that he would reopen the investigation. The investigators retest all the forensic evidence and went through 1,500 pages of reports, but still weren't able to come up with anything new. There was no physical evidence or DNA that they could find to find out who killed Heather. Even Heather's car had no evidence in it. It was cleaned so well that they didn't even find any of Heather's fingerprints in it. What I thought was interesting was that one of the investigators said that even if they had any DNA, it probably wouldn't have helped because you're talking about identical twins. So even if they would have found a hair or any other object that had DNA on it, it wouldn't pinpoint which brother it was.
Well, I'm going to have to disagree with you there because twins, even identical ones, do not share the exact DNA. They each have their own profile.
As they are combing through all the evidence, they do find a statement that Roseanne made the day after they confronted David about what was in his Suburban. The investigator said, quote, "She had made the statement. She had to marry him so she couldn't testify against him. And I really don't know what else that means other than what it sounds like it means." End quote. It was believed Roseanne had to have been part of it as well because she was living in the house. How did she not know? Plus, what's with the quickie marriage? I can just hear it now. Oh, my sister-in-law has been missing for a week. Let's go get married. It's kind of ludicrous if you ask me.
Yeah, it really is. And I'll never understand how someone can marry a person who they know murdered a family member or anybody for that matter.
It's 2009, and 6 years after Heather was murdered, and the family is just beside themselves. One of the investigators is assigned to the case full-time, which really pushes things through. As they are building the case, the files have gone from 1,500 pages to 30,000 pages and fills up over 15 boxes.
Wow, they really dug in. That sounds like some pretty good police work. I mean, I hope.
Me too. Part of the evidence that was found in Daniel's residence was a DVD. It was a sex tape made years earlier with Daniel and Heather, where he had tied her up bondage style. The investigators say, quote, "What we ended up seeing in this videotape are images of Daniel tying Heather up in a very similar manner as to how she was found." End quote. Do you hear the dun 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 dun?
Yes, I do. Loud and clear.
They also discovered that Daniel had a dating profile from an online dating service where he listed himself as a widower. It doesn't sound like it's a bad thing. I mean, after all, it's been 6 years. But when he opened the profile and listed himself as a widower, Heather's body hadn't been found yet.
That is such a dumb move. I mean, he just could have waited. It's so dumb, but it sounds to me like Daniel is a few beers short of a six-pack.
Maybe he's just a 40.
Right.
Things are starting to add up against one or both of the brothers, but the prosecutor still needed more information. They don't know exactly how she died, and all the evidence is circumstantial. I can only imagine Heather's parents' frustration, but they want to make sure that they can get them arrested before they do anything.
So at this point, are Heather's parents thinking that everybody was involved, the twins and the wife?
I think at this point, they just think Daniel.
Okay.
Another 2 years passes when the prosecutor takes what he has to the grand jury, and he got the indictment. On December 14th, 2011, Daniel, David, and Roseanne DeWild were arrested for Heather's murder. But the case still wasn't a slam dunk, and they have to prove that all these three did it. The interviewer asked one of Daniel's attorneys, who was full of himself, feeling extremely confident, ready for trial, quote, "Was there any physical evidence that tied Daniel to the death of his wife?" End quote. The attorney replied, quote, "Not a shred, none," end quote.
Well, maybe they hadn't found any physical evidence yet, but that motive is very strong.
Overly strong. The prosecutors, on the other hand, are a little more worried because the majority of their case is based on circumstantial evidence. But wait, Batman, things take a turn.
Da-na-na-na-na-na-na.
All right, Robin, calm down.
You just called me Batman. How did I just get demoted?
Well, yeah, I was talking to myself, They actually thought that at some point one of them would have come forward, and they figured it would be Roseanne. But it wasn't Roseanne. It was David that came forward. Now remember, it's been 9 years. David comes forward, and he tells investigators that he hid Heather's body after his brother Daniel killed her. Roseanne said that she would have never guessed that the brothers would have been involved in Heather's death. I say to Roseanne, quote, "You're full of poo," end quote.
Oh my, not poo. Geez, Batman, you're such a tough guy.
Well, it's a kid's show, trying to be PC.
It's a kid's show as we talk about all this stuff. It is not a kid's show.
I was talking Batman.
It's the Future Messed Up Kids of America show. Oh, gosh, that's funny.
So here's what David told them. He said that Daniel started planning to kill Heather in April 2003 because he was ordered to pay child support. David tried to talk Daniel out of it, but Daniel wasn't having any of it and told him he was going to do it with or without him. That was the point he made the decision to help his brother, because if he didn't, he would get caught.
Great. An identical one who's as smart as a stick. Come on now, guys.
So now we have 240s. April 4th, 2012, David and the investigator went back to the garage where the murder occurred. David was videotaped as he described what happened on July 24th, 2003. Heather arrived with the kids about 12 o'clock. She went with Daniel into the garage and left the children playing in the house. The prosecutor thought that he got Heather to go into the garage because she wanted the DVD back.
And the best thing he could have done was give it to her, because then they used it against him later on. Dum-dum.
Okay, have an opinion.
Well, I'm just saying, if it was at her house, they wouldn't have found it because she wasn't being investigated.
No, but, they probably still would have found it.
How? They're not checking her house.
After she's found dead, yeah, they're probably going to go to her house to see if there's anything that could help them figure out who did it to her.
Well, maybe.
David was already in the garage. Heather walked in and asked, what did he want to show her? Daniel followed her in, closed the door, grabbed her shoulders, and threw her on the floor hard. David said that she went to get up and looked at him for help. The investigator said, quote, "She knew something was going to happen, what was about to happen, and kind of looked at him, help me here. And he said, I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything to help her," end quote. The investigator believed that David could have stopped it at any point, but he did not. He didn't stop his brother in any sense. Her eyes looking at me for help would have burned in my brain. But then again, I wouldn't have let it get that far.
Yeah, but the difference is you have a brain for those eyes to burn into. He obviously doesn't.
David said on the video, quote, "And he takes a mallet off the counter, and she's trying to get back up. Boom, whack her. She drops. He tosses the hammer down. He takes his noose, puts it around her neck, then hung her from the rafters," end quote.
Okay, I did not see that coming. She's the mother of his children. This is over child support?
Over child support. He was mad.
Jeez. Because God forbid you help support the children you created.
They were married for 6 years, so you'd think he would have had some kind of loyalty.
Well, apparently not.
Daniel began to stage her body by trying to make it look like some kind of bondage act gone wrong. Then he put her body in trash bags. David took Heather's car and dropped it off at the apartment complex parking lot. When he got back, Daniel had already put Heather's body in David's Suburban.
Okay, I thought this was Daniel's car when you mentioned the Suburban the first time, but it's David's car?
Yes.
Wow. It's almost like he's setting his brother up. What a jerk.
Yeah, it only gets better. Here's some things I'm thinking about as far as Roseanne goes. If David is taking Heather's car to the apartment complex, how did he get home? Where's Roseanne? I mean, I realize he could have taken a cab back or a bus, but that would mean that he could have been traced. And who is watching the kids while Daniel is setting up Heather's body and David is out putting the car at the apartment complex? Where's Roseanne? This whole operation had to have taken at least 3 people.
I highly agree with that. She's obviously involved.
There's just too many parts for 2 people to do.
Right.
David tells the investigators that he just wanted to make sure that she was not breathing, so he put his hand on her. My question is, where was that concern before his brother whacked her with a mallet?
I didn't see that comment as concern at all. I took it that he was confirming that she was dead.
Well, I watched the videotape, him showing around the garage. He actually did look concerned when he said that. He seems kind of like a milquetoast to me a little bit.
What does milquetoast mean?
Soft guy.
Oh, I don't know. I don't think a soft guy could do what he did.
I think his brother's in charge. That's the problem.
Yeah.
So you know how they went to the house and there was no signs of anything, no blood, no evidence? Well, apparently the brothers watched the CSI shows and anything like CSI shows. And one of the things that they did was double glove. They put 2 sets of gloves on because they didn't want to leave any trace evidence. I mean, I love those shows, and I wonder how many people get ideas from that.
Yeah, those shows are great if you're not a killer. But if you are, you could definitely learn a lot.
Is that Murder 101?
Oh, I mean, we could watch the shows and write the book. They just spell it all out for everybody.
Right.
Sometimes I watch the shows and I'm like, oh my gosh, somebody's going to get an idea now.
David also told the investigator that where he put Heather was not where he actually was supposed to put her. Where he was supposed to put her was someplace more remote, but he had transmission problems on his Suburban, so he wasn't able to take her to the site that they had prearranged.
Well, that explains the shallow grave because it sounds like he was in a hurry and it hadn't been pre-dug. And I just want to make a comment here. Why are they having so many car problems when they're both mechanics?
You would think it would be fixed.
Right.
Especially at trying times like this.
Yeah, especially when they've got this grand plan of getting rid of a body, you kind of want to make sure your car's in the right condition.
All this sounds great that he's confessing now, but let me reiterate, 9 years later, they thought he's been lying for 9 years. What's to say he's not lying now? So they put him under a polygraph test, and he passed as far as the issues of killing Heather goes. But I guess he failed in other areas, which included the involvement of others. You guessed it, as far as Roseanne's involvement. Color me surprised. David made a deal for all of this information to get his sentence shortened. As far as Roseanne goes, she had already been released 8 months after they arrested her because they didn't have enough evidence. Although they still believed she had some type of involvement, they couldn't prove it. To this day, she denies having any involvement in the murder.
Yeah, let's go with that.
That's her story, and she's sticking to it. It's 6 months later, and they're ready to go to trial. Prosecution is worried because they still don't have any forensic evidence. Their whole case relies on David's testimony, which means he's testifying against his brother. The thought has entered their minds that he may chicken out and not testify at all.
Ooh, so what if they pulled the old Freaky Friday on everybody and it was actually Daniel pretending to be David? That would be a cool twist.
You're demented.
Well, I mean, if Daniel was in charge of David, he may have gotten him to switch.
In jail? Okay.
Maybe before jail. We don't know. Let me have Freaky Friday. Just let me have it.
All right, it's yours.
Real life Freaky Friday.
But David didn't chicken out. Prosecution asked him, quote, "Who killed Heather?" End quote. and David just pointed to his brother, Daniel.
But was it Daniel or was it David? We will never know.
Are you off the wall or are you serious? Defense is saying that Daniel is innocent, that he didn't know where Heather went after she left the house on that day, July 24, 2003. The defense attorney said what Daniel had told him was that she didn't say exactly where she was going. He expected her back in a few hours, but she never came back, and he didn't know what happened to her. The attorney said that the story that Daniel told him never changed. He was always consistent. So my question is, didn't Daniel tell Heather's mother that she went shopping? He said he didn't know exactly where she was going, expected her to come back. Then why tell her parents that she went shopping?
Because he's not smart.
Daniel's defense team also said that David was the one that killed Heather because he admitted that he got rid of the car and he got rid of the body. But what was his motive? They had an answer for that. They said that David was always attracted to Heather and that possibly after the divorce, the two of them could get together. And David killed her because she didn't have the same feelings, but there was nothing to support that theory. It sounds like speculation anyway.
It really does. And why would anybody marry the same face you just divorced?
But if they're switched, she would have been marrying Daniel.
Same face.
Still. Prosecution said, quote, I don't think that there's in any way David could have done it by himself. And looking at the dynamics, it's pretty clear that David was set up by Daniel. Daniel is the controlling one. David wasn't going to lose his house. Daniel was going to lose his house. David had absolutely no motive, none whatsoever, to kill Heather, end quote. Plus, he added they pretty much got away with murder. Why would he all of a sudden implicate himself when he could have easily said it was an accident? But the defense attorney comes back and says David turned against his brother because he got a plea deal of 12 years instead of life. Then added that David was the one who had violence in his past, apparently attacked his first wife. Quote, David at one point tried to choke his wife and had his hands around her neck until she passed out and said, next time I'll kill you, end quote, says the defense attorney.
Oh my goodness. Evil times two.
Sounds like something runs in the family with those identical twins.
Yeah, that's, wow.
Makes you wonder what they were doing in the womb.
Creating chaos, stretching mom out.
Another piece of evidence that wasn't heard by the jury was that David told the investigators that Daniel had proposed the two of them kill each other's ex-wives. Daniel thought murder was better than paying child support, but the judge said that was too prejudicial and wouldn't allow it.
You know, they could kill each other's wives and then blame each other. That's actually not the dumbest idea.
But who would know who is who, which is which?
You know, you only have to create doubt. So if everything gets jumbled up, because I've heard of this before in real cases, they just introduce a crazy idea and it jumbles things up enough that people can't be 100% sure and then they don't get convicted.
Makes sense, and I'll tell you why. The trial lasted 2 weeks, and on November 16, 2012, it was in the hands of the jury. This is where it becomes even more complicated. Originally, 6 jurors voted not guilty. 6 voted guilty on the first day. The second day, the vote went to 10 guilty and 2 not guilty. Interviews with the jury from the trial were saying that the 2 holdouts needed to know exactly what happened and needed direct physical evidence for first-degree murder when the rest of the jury looked at it for what it was. So what you just said, it was jumbled up enough?
Mm-hmm. It wasn't clear enough.
Right. So the jury agreed to lesser charges. Daniel planned to kill his wife, and he helped to cover up the crime. But they were deadlocked as far as which of the twin brothers killed Heather.
And you know, I feel for the jurors because being a juror is not easy. There's life-changing power in that vote.
Especially when it's a murder charge and somebody's going to go to jail for life.
Or not go, and they think that they did it. It's a tough spot.
This caused a whole mix of emotions for the family and for the jurors that had voted him guilty because it meant that he wouldn't go away for life. He was probably going to get out. The district attorney planned to retry Daniel for first-degree murder, but a month later, Daniel took a plea of second-degree murder because he was afraid of ending up in prison with no chance of parole.
I just love how killers only think of themselves when it's all said and done, all the way to the end.
Okay, you need to hold on to that thought.
Okay.
On February 28th, 2013, Daniel DeWild was back in court, pled guilty to knowingly causing the death of another person, and also said he would not appeal. The judge was not happy. He just couldn't understand what kind of father would destroy so many lives, including those of his children. Heather's father said in court, quote, "I'd just like to say that Daniel destroyed the lives of his children. He destroyed the lives of his own family members, all for unnecessary greed and ego that accomplished nothing." End quote.
Well said.
This part gets to me, and this is the part I said hold on to that thought. During David's sentencing, he was given the opportunity to make a statement, and he said, quote, "I'm just sorry for all the pain I've caused." End quote. Daniel was given the same opportunity. The judge told him, "You have the right to say anything you want," before sentencing, kind of like a last-minute plea for his life. Daniel never exercised that right. He never apologized for anything to anybody. The investigator said that he didn't think Daniel had any remorse whatsoever. I mean, come on, dude. You killed your wife with a mallet? Nice role model for your kids, doing it and not showing any remorse.
But let's not forget he hung her as well. He's an animal, and his kids will be better off without him in their lives. And I have a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know if they started serving together at the same prison, the twins?
I'll be honest, I don't know.
Okay, I was just curious.
I mean, they're in the same town. One would assume they would be in the same prison.
I would assume that, but I was just curious if you knew.
The judge sentenced Daniel DeWild to 74 years in prison. His and Heather's children, Jacob and Hannah, live with Heather's parents. Daniel DeWild remains in Colorado prison. David DeWild was released on parole in 2020, just in time to be locked down for COVID.
Yeesh.
The district attorney, Scott Story, said that it had taken 8 years, the entire 2 terms of his office, to get justice for Heather. The interviewer asked if it was worth it, and he said, quote, "Yes, absolutely worth it. Many times politicians can't fulfill their promises. This is one promise that was kept." End quote.
Well, at least that's a decent ending to this horrible story.
I feel so bad for Heather. I want to say she was 30.
Wow, that is so young.
Yeah, her poor kids.
How sad. Truly tragic. Thank you for doing all the work on that. It was a great story.
Well, thank you very much.
We just want to thank everybody for listening. Don't forget to take care, have fun, and let your grimaginations run wild. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye. We would just like to thank you all for sharing your time with us. And if you'd like to send us your creepy little grim bits, we would love to hear your personal stories, interests, and suggestions. Please email them to grimwitwithdimwits@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram @grimwitwithdimwits, X @grimwitwithdimwits, and Facebook Grimwit with Dimwits. And please join us every Monday for new episodes, and feel free to share us with your grim-loving friends.
And we would really appreciate if you would take a minute to rate and review. 5-star ratings go a long way, and they would really help us out. Until then, we would love it if you'd come back next week to delve with us into the strange and unusual things we just can't wrap our skulls around.